Hey, so, do you guys remember your coloring? This is chapter 2's lecture. Do you remember your coloring? So this was all about being what? So these are the characteristics of life, okay? We all have these. All life has it. Let's also, I was just challenging you guys a little bit with thinking from the organism's point of view. Let's remember there's a lot of life out there, not just plants and animals, fungus, bacteria, single-cell protista. We're talking about all of it. So the characteristics of life, we have a list here, maybe. So all living cells can take in, convert materials and energy from the environment and release waste. Does this sound familiar? Did some of the presentations talk to you about this? Was this redundant? We talked about it a lot? Yes. Okay, so you've got to know that. And then the next two bullets also people did a great job presenting about. Organisms have a high degree of chemical organization. They're also complex structures. And this takes a lot of what to be this way? Energy. Fabulous. And also we had people talking to you about that. Fighting that second law of thermodynamics. That energy in this system is continually increasing in disorder, right? Remember entropy? I can never say that right. So anyway, now this one I definitely want to see you write something down, and I hope you guys, I see some highlighters out, awesome. Or get maybe some colored pencils out. Get that right side of your brain working with your left side of the brain. I want you to add stuff here. So all living things have coded instructions such as DNA for maintaining their organization and activities. This is also what's passed on to their offspring. This is called their genetic material. So why don't you write that down, genes or genetics or something, so you think about it like that. Also, referring back to the last chapter, deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. What's the other one? RNA, yep, ribonucleic acid. What am I talking about? What type of chemicals are these? They're nucleic acids, okay? So we keep building on our prior knowledge. And one more slide on this. All organisms sense and react to changes in their environment. Even the plants, even the bacteria. Maybe you can't see it because they do it too slowly. Maybe you can't see it because it happens too fast. You've got to think about these other perspectives. They all grow and develop. They all reproduce with the same species, with similar organisms. They all communicate. Now this is some really cool research here on bacteria communication. Do you guys remember when we did the patterns of scientists and I had us each read about one scientist on a little piece of paper? We heard a little bit about Bonnie Bassler. I'm going to put it up on the Edmodo page this weekend, maybe today if I have time, but for sure by tomorrow. Bonnie Bassler has a really great TED Talk on bacteria communication. And so I'll do some sort of little extra credit with that. But this is exciting because if we can figure out how bacteria communicate with each other. For example, how do bacteria know when you have a weak immune system and decide to reproduce and build an army of bacteria to eat you? Because that's lots of times what they're doing. Okay, how do they know? Okay, so if we could figure out how they're communicating, could we fight them better? And this goes back to world wars and even littler wars. We're always trying to get the bad guy or the other guy's communication. There's really no bad guys, is there, on war? It's both sides. Yes. Somehow they have to sense that you have that vulnerability, right? Okay, anyway, and then this topic. Sometimes we only talk about animals as being able to move. No, same thing. All life has some movement. Maybe it's at the cellular level movement. Check out your plants at home or at your friend's house. Maybe they move so slow you don't notice it. How are they trying to grow and expand? Are they putting things out? Are they repositioning themselves? Check it out. Okay, these next sections I'm going to go rather quickly because why? Why am I going to move quickly on these next sections? Well, you heard some good presentations on it. I will emphasize, so make sure you're highlighting or circling, or I'll reteach maybe a little bit, or just remind you some of this. Chemical energy I've been talking about for a long time. You should understand that chemical energy is held in these molecules. Where at? Where is the chemical energy held? Stored in molecules. How do we free up the chemical energy then? I'm hearing a lot of good information. No, that's your cellular level. So we're at the molecular level. So later I'm going to show you a molecule here, and we have to break something to get energy. What do we break? No, that'd be awesome. If we break atoms, that is awesome. That's nuclear reactions. That's fission. We can do that. We get a ton of energy, but that's not going on in your bodies. We break bonds. Okay? Well, we don't. The chemicals break bonds, and that's how we get our energy. Okay, it is very easy to confuse free energy and heat energy. Let's get this straight right now. Free energy is the energy that your body uses to do its work, or the cells use to do their work. This is the energy that the cells are breaking things apart for to get. Okay? Heat energy is what? Is it lost? It's unusable, and we say it's lost. It's somewhere. It's moving atoms somewhere. It dissipates somewhere. But can we use the free energy to do work? No. It can improve our environment. It can make us warmer, right? Or maybe too warm. So free energy is used for work by the cells. Heat energy is lost. We use free energy. Yeah. Sorry, did I say it backwards? Heat energy we lose. It's escape to the environment. Okay? We can't use it to do work. You feel it. Have you guys ever sat with a laptop computer on your lap? It's not good, is it? And also, if you put a pillow to it now to protect your legs, you're hurting the computer, right? Because of all that energy in there. So the energy that's being transferred between the little wires and the little things in your computer, it's not efficient either. So it loses heat energy every time it does a transfer, just like in your body or inside the cells. Okay, now there is a lot of vocabulary in this section, but there's also a lot of synonyms this section. So think about that. Let's get 4 words done right now with just looking at 2. Heterotrophs. What's the synonym for heterotrophs? Consumers. What for autotrophs? What's this? Producers. Okay? So now it's not so bad. Heterotrophs do what? Consumers do what? They eat. They eat. Autotrophs do what? They make the sugars. They make the food from what? From, most of the ones we're going to deal with are from light. So we call them photoautotrophs. There are some others, I'm not going to make you worry about it right now, that can get their energy from chemical energy, non-living chemical energy like methane gas and even sulfuric acid. We're not going to worry about those weird bacteria at this point right now. Okay? Now, the photoautotrophs do what to collect the energy and to make the food? They do. They use photosynthesis. So when I ask you guys what the plants are making with photosynthesis, what are you going to tell me? Sugars, food. But it's the sugars. What kind of sugar? Glucose. I liked how you guys said that. I didn't want you to say oxygen because you're looking from our perspective again. Okay? They actually will use their oxygen also, but they're not making oxygen for us. No, it's not about us. It is a good byproduct. Okay, so I'm not going to worry about chemosynthesis. This is like a bigger vocab word that is talking about autotrophs, I'm not going to worry about it. If I'm not worrying about it, should you worry about it at this point? So how many people crossed out the word or made some point saying not to worry about it? Write on your notes. Okay, so this talked about everything I just said, this whole happy cycle of life, the carbon-oxygen cycle. We talked about producers, we talked about consumers. Okay, let's take a second, a little bit more at decomposers, because I think we get a little confused with decomposers. Are decomposers, are they autotrophs or are they heterotrophs? They are heterotrophs. So are they producers or are they consumers? They're consumers. So a mushroom, is it an autotroph or is it a heterotroph? Hetero, it eats. And so a long time ago, they thought that a little mushroom was like a tree, like a plant, like an autotroph, but it's not. It's eating. There's another slide here you'll see where it has these cool hyphae things. They're not roots, really. They're down there in the ground or stuck into the trees if they're growing on the trees, and they're eating. They're excreting enzymes to break stuff down, and they're absorbing that food. Okay? That's why the mold grows on your bread. It's eating it. You could share a little. Okay? So they're getting the last remains of energy from the dead organisms, and they're also freeing up those chemicals for photosynthesis. Okay, I'm not going to say much. I'm going to talk to the three of you after class. Okay, I'm not going to say much about the food web. I think you guys are pretty solid on this, except for let's emphasize what the arrows mean. What do the arrows demonstrate? The transfer of what, everybody? Energy. Okay, so it's going up the different levels. Okay, I don't remember. Some groups did better with talking about these terms than others. I don't remember what class did or didn't. What does bio mean? Living. So these are all the living organisms in an ecosystem. When you put A in front of something, what does that do to the word? So we had decided that A means non or without or the opposite, right? So these are the non-living things. Perfect, perfect. Without or absence of. So abiotic. Now, there is a gray area. In reality, anything that was once alive, like a log, and part of your book used a log as an example of a non-living thing, I could argue that that's biotic. It's not living anymore, but it's definitely organic, right? But then I don't want to argue it's so much the fact of what about our fossil fuels? So these oils. I'm going to not say that that's biotic. I'm going to say that those oils and gases are abiotic. But where did they come from? 1,000 years ago plus, right? Thousands, millions of years ago, some of it. So there's a gray in between area between non-living and living, okay? But typically, right, if I said a rock, what am I saying? Okay, I got a mold, biotic, okay? Now your ecosystems are all the biotic and biotic components in an area, okay? And then habitats, there's habitats within ecosystems where particular organisms live. And then the biggest level is the what? Biosphere. What's the sphere standing for? So what's it standing for? I heard it. Earth. So this is anywhere on our sphere where we can find what? Life is our biosphere. Okay, you guys are doing great. Okay, then we got to the laws. Again, there's some redundancy. There's synonyms. They mean the same thing. The first law of thermodynamics and the law of conservation of energy states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. Yes, maybe it's useless to it. Maybe we can't utilize it, but it's still out there somewhere. Okay, that's your first law. That energy out there is what causes your second law. Your second law of thermodynamics, oh, hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself, Again, I want to point out at every time the energy transfers, there's loss of energy as heat. And that's what's allowing these molecules in the air to bang into each other. It mixes things up. So it's not very efficient. Okay, then I get to the second law. So because there's all this energy everywhere around us, atoms are moving. Because of that, things go from an organized state to a chaotic or disorganized. What's the vocab term? What's that called? Entropy, right? Or however you say it. I always say it wrong. Okay, so there it is. That's the second law of thermodynamics. The systems get more and more disordered. Now, there's not chaos and disorder everywhere because what do? We fix it. We organize it. We spend energy fighting this law. And that's what organisms are doing. All those capturing energy to stay organized, to stay alive, to stay structured. Okay? And this reminds me, before I go on, it's like dust, right? I didn't put the dust there. Just got there on its own. A little bit, I have to take a little bit more of my own responsibility for my closet or my desk, right? But it just seems to happen. And a lot of that has to do with dropping things, moving things, and it takes energy to reorganize. And we have to stay on it if we're going to stay organized, which is not fun. Okay, then we get back to enzymes. Think about our lab stuff here. Again, some vocabulary, you guys. Enzymes are types of what? Catalysts. Catalysts can be just simple movement, heat, light. These things can make things react with each other. Okay? Catalysts are what again? Enzymes are in your cells that make the reactions happen easier. And what are they again? Proteins. Okay? Yeah. So then, again, we talked about shape. They are very specific to the reaction they do. One, like catalysts, can't go break down sugar. It can only break down hydrogen peroxide because it fits to those molecules. Okay, and then you have the two graphs that represent this. Don't make it harder than it is. It tells you what these things are in the context. What's an S? Yeah, it's the substrate, which is the starting molecule. They call it a substrate, what's the other synonym for it? The reactant. We get the needed activation energy. We need more on this side. Then we make what's our P? Our products. What's the E over here? If we have an E, enzyme, do we need less energy? So can they happen more efficiently and faster? Yes. Okay, let's listen to this.
Each type of enzyme catalyzes only one or a few specific reactions. The specific reaction catalyzed by an enzyme depends on a small area of its tertiary structure called the active site. The active site has a shape that closely matches the shape of the starting molecule or molecules. The close fit of the starting molecule, called the substrate, into the active site of the enzyme brings the enzyme and substrate close together. Because enzymes are not rigid, sometimes the binding of the substrate induces it to adjust its shape slightly, providing a better fit between enzyme and substrate. Once the chemical reaction occurs, the newly formed molecules break away, leaving the enzyme the same as it was before the reaction. Many reactions catalyzed by enzymes are reversible. With the aid of enzymes, two reacting molecules may combine to form a single molecule, or the single molecule may convert into the two smaller molecules.
Okay, so this will be one of your paragraph answer choices on the upcoming test. It'll go a little bit farther than this because I'll want you to compare it to a lock and key. So I make you explain how this is like an analogy to a lock and key. Just following me on that? Last class, somebody mentioned, it's kind of reminded them of like a dating site, right, of matching people together. But anyway, so with the lock and key analogy, you guys, like the lock moves, it changes position, right, to open the door. I think the better analogy is that the substrates are the lock. The key can be reused, right? But I could see how at first, especially because those substrates come in, maybe you think that's the key too, right? That's too picky. I won't worry about that, but I want the enzyme could change a little bit so that, yes, I could see that argument either way. But think about it a little bit. I would give you points either way if you explained it, okay, of how this has to do with a lock and key situation. Okay, real quick, sorry I went too fast on that one. I do want to point out, I said it to you when we were prepping for the lab also though, enzymes are very specific to their environment. So enzymes in your stomach, do you think they have to be tougher enzymes to deal with the acid? Okay, so it depends where the enzyme is the environment's in, if it will hold its shape or not. Okay, hang in here with me. We're almost done here. The term metabolism is important for you guys to know this. This is just all the sum total of all the reactions in your body. Now think about that word metabolism. How do we use it everyday life? When have you heard it being used? Burning calories. What else? Digestion. What else? Okay, gaining calories. What were we going to say? Do you ever hear like, oh, that person has a fast metabolism, slow metabolism, okay? So if you're more active, you are more efficient, you have a faster metabolism. If you are older, your metabolism starts to slow down, not you older-wise, like me older-wise, okay? Just barely. But if you stay active, you can also fight that and keep that metabolism going so that your body is more efficient, okay? Getting the energy it needs, burning the energy it doesn't need. Okay, and we also had a group talk about this, the synthesis, the decomposition. So reactions are either building up molecules or they are breaking them down. So the monomers for your DNA are the nucleotides. So if we built this molecule, what type of reaction is that? Synthesis. If I told you we were going to tear this molecule down or break the bonds in this molecule, decomposition. The other thing you need to realize is what's the deal with the energy. If I'm synthesizing, am I taking up energy or am I releasing energy? I'm building it, I'm taking in energy. If I break it down, what am I getting? Yes, okay. So see how with these words I can ask you for a definition or a matching 2 or 3 different ways. Okay, so that's how well you guys got to know it to do well on the quizzes and then more importantly the tests. Okay, I'm not going to worry about oxidation. It's a little bit interesting if you like chemistry, but I'm not going to worry about it. This ATP molecule is hugely important. Stay with me, you guys. We're almost done. Adenosine triphosphate. What do you think the tri stands for? 3. 3 what? You can see them right there. Now, back to photosynthesis and making glucose. We eat the glucose, right? Through the food web, we get it. They make the glucose. Now, do plants do cellular respiration also? Yes, they do. I love to hear that. Very common misconception. So lots of times we're taught the plants do photosynthesis and the animals do cellular respiration. But the glucose molecule holds too much energy, and there's not an efficient way to use glucose to do the work. So what happens is cellular respiration is a step-by-step process that pulls out energy in small amounts so that we can build ATP molecules. These are the molecules that are used to do our work. This is an analogous to, if I wanted you to heat me up a can of chicken noodle soup, you started a bonfire to do it. Follow me on that? So glucose stores way too much energy for us to be using it for little jobs. So the ATP is like a little perfect amount of energy. And by the way, it's only going to break one bond to give you that perfect amount of energy. Where do you think it's going to break? What looks kind of fragile? Yeah, right here. That's sticking out there. That's easy to break. So what the cell does is it breaks the phosphate up. It gets a little bit of energy to do its work. Then the other cool thing about it is now you have an ADP. Why an ADP? What do you think the D stands for? 2, die, like dice, right? We can easily add some free energy and recharge it. And that's what cellular respiration does, okay? So we go back and forth. We have like a charged battery and a partially charged battery. This is the molecule that does our work. And that goes over everything I already talked about. Okay, one more section. I don't plan on getting through all of it, but I want to get through a little bit, and then we'll eat our crackers. Okay, so digestion. Why all of a sudden is this chapter making us talk about digestion? We need to get our nutrients. We need to get our energy, right? Okay, now check this out. First off, there's 2 types of digestion. One is called mechanical or physical. Physical. This is your teeth chomping things up, making it smaller. This is your stomach squeezing it, getting it into this soupy thing, right, so that we can digest it. There's also chemical digestion, and it starts in your mouth also. And this is where there's enzymes that are breaking down things through chemical reactions, okay, and it continues. And that's what's going on a lot in those intestines. Okay, now, I want to show you that bird for a second. Do you see this tube? The mouth of the bird, this big long tube going all the way down and out the anus. Do we have a tube similar to that? Is ours longer? How long was it? Do you guys remember? About 9 meters or 30 feet, right? So now let's think about this. This is pretty wacky. You have a hole right here and a big long tube and then a hole out the other end. You are like a donut. It's very awkward. Now hold on. So is the inside of the tube us? Is it made of cells, the inside of the tube? The lining of the tube is made of cells. If you're not eating, there's nothing in there except water and some solutions. If you're eating, there's food in there. It's not you. Do you guys see that? So this is kind of funky. You're like a donut. Okay? So this is not really you. It's an opening. A big long opening inside you. Okay? Now, that goes to this word, and this is kind of weird, extracellular. Extra means what? More, out, there's beyond, okay? So really, we do extracellular digestion, just like the fungus. In this tube, we secrete stuff into the tube to take care of the food, and then we absorb the food in through our intestines, through the little villi. Make sure you check out that picture in your book when you're studying for vocab. But anyway, so we do all this digestion in this tube, and then we absorb it back into our cells, or we absorb it into our cells. So we actually have out-of-body digestion, if you really want to get technical. Okay? So now that was extracellular. There is intracellular, where some organisms, like plants, their sugar's made inside the cell, and they break down the sugar inside their cells, right? And there's some paramecium that are cool. They engulf food through endocytosis, and they take that food inside their cell and digest it inside their cell. It's a little trivial, but I just wanted to mention it, so that's intracellular. Now, what about these guys? Here's your molds. Here's your Venus flytrap. Where's the digestion taking place? Is it inside the organism cells or outside the organism cells? So what is it, intra or extra? Awesome. What about an earthworm? just like us. So what is it? Extra. Do you guys know that you're just like a worm? Okay, you have made it. I'm going to stop there. We are almost done.